All right. So we had learnt about the toString method, equals, and hash code method till yesterday, and we had seen how they behave when we override each of them. Right. So let's learn about clone method. Something clone. Okay. So in general, does anybody know what is clone in general English?
Copy. Clone means copy.
Clone means copy.
Copy.
Exactly. Right. So this is just nothing but creating the another copy of the object. So whatever the behavior we talk, everything will be around the objects only here. Right. So we were learning about the object class. Now the clone also is something related to the objects. Right. We can create the copy objects using clonable clonable interface and overriding its clone method. Clone method. So there is a so we learned about the interfaces, right? When we are learning about the interfaces, we had created our own interfaces like interface A, interface B, interface C like that. But Java itself has many interfaces. So one of them is the clonable interface, which is used to help us to clone the object. Clone is nothing but copying the objects, right? So let's learn practically how this can be done. I'm going to create ABCDFGH. Okay. Int I. Okay. So we wanted to use the clonable interface. So how do we work with the interfaces? We should implement the interface. Clonable. See, it is already available. Clonable. Java.lang. Now I create the PSVM. I'll create a object h1 equal to new h. And then h1 dot I. I'm initializing the value for the variable I equal to 100. Now I'm going to create another object h2 equal to h1 dot clone. See, there is a method available clone, right? This is giving the error because if you just put the mouse pointer here, if you remember last week we learned about the checked exception. That means the compiler is forcing us to handle the exception. If you see, if you just scroll on this red line, it will show unhandled exception, that is java.lang.clone not supported exception. Add exception to method signature, or add exception to method signature, or surround with try catch. You can use any one of them. You can use any one of them. This is mandatory. Whenever you try to clone any object, it is mandatory to handle the clone not supported exception. If I just click on this, please notice line number 7. What is the difference it will happen when I click on the first step, that is the add exception to method signature? It has added throws clone not supported exception. it is still giving the error. Required type is H and provided is object, right? See, if you see the clone method, what is the return type of the clone method? This is a clone method which is available in object class. See, when I clicked on it by holding control, it came here. What is the return type of the clone method?
Object.
Object. So whatever is there on the left hand side of the method name, that is the return type, right? So clone method is actually returning the object, but what are we assigning? We are assigning to H, right? So that is not matching. So whenever we are assigning any objects, it has to be always matching, both on the left hand side and the right hand side. It has to be matching. Otherwise, if you remember, we learnt about the typecasting, right? On the left hand side, if you have int, on the right hand side, if you have some other data type like a byte or short or whatever it is, there is some formula, right? Auto upcasting and explicit downcasting. Similarly, even for the objects also, it has to match. Whatever is there on the right hand side should be the same that is coming from the left hand side. But here on the right hand side, it is giving the object, but on the left hand side, we are assigning to H. This is what exactly it is saying. Required type is H, provided is object. So again, you just click on this red bulb, you will get the three options: cast to H, change variable H2 to object type, migrate H2 to object, right? So first option is saying we should do the cast, that is auto casting and explicit downcasting. So this is nothing but the explicit downcasting. The second and third option, what they are saying is object variable H2 type to object. So this itself asking us to change the type to object, but we are working with the class H, right? So that is irrelevant for us. Whenever you get any error, you will get like this multiple solutions, but it is your intelligence to identify which is the right option to pick. So when we know that, only by understanding all the concepts, then only you will be understanding that which answer you have to pick. Answers will be there, but it will be multiple answers based on the scenario and based on the need. You have to pick the right answer. That is depending on us. Okay, so here we want to create the object for H, not for the object class, right? So that's the reason we should go with the first option. See, this is exactly the same format that we learned about explicit downcasting. Yes or no? We were putting the data type in the brackets here, right? You guys remember or not? I don't know. This is exactly it is. Now the error has gone, right? Now if I put SOP of SOut of h2.i, what is the value that will be printed? What is the value that will be printed? h2.i
100.
100. Why it is 100?
It's clone of H1.
Exactly. That is the exact answer, right? H1 is created and we have initialized the value of I with the H1 object with 100, right? And we are creating the H2, that is just another copy of H1, exactly the copy of H1. So whatever the values are there in the H1, the same values will be copied to H2. The same values will be copied to H2. Let's say, for example, I'll create H3 equal to new H3. Sorry, new H. That's out of H3.i. What will be printed here? H3.i.
There's no value assigned for it.
Yes, when there is no value assigned, what is the logic?
Default value
Default value. What is the default value?
0.
0. Simple, right? See, now you see, now the linking is happening from the topic that we learned in the first class, right? So you should never leave the topics that we learned in the previous classes. Everything will be interlinked. Clear? Any doubts here in this clone thing?
No, sir.
Anybody else? Clone method returns object, but we are assigning it to object type of h, which needs downcasting. Downcasting. That is the reason we have to downcast. And also here one more point is it is mandatory to handle clone not supported exception. Clone not supported exception while using the by implementing the clonable interface. Implementing the clonable interface. In the interviews, they will ask you what is clonable, right? The question is very simple. So what you need to explain is when they say what is cloning, you need to first give the definition. We can create the copy of the objects by using the clonable interface and overriding its clone method. So this is the theoretical point that you would explain easily, right? The next thing that you need to do is you need to explain in the programmatical way. What you need to do, you need to say we need to implement the clonable interface and then we can call the clone method. While calling the clone method, it is mandatory to handle the clone not supported exception. These are the 3 points you need to cover. If you cover these 3 or 4 points, there won't be any cross question. For example, if I remove this, again it gives the error here, right? More options. Now I am picking the second option. See how it looks. See, this piece of code went into the try catch block. There are only two ways, right, to handle the exception. Both are same. Whether you throws the clone not supported exception here or you put the try catch here. Both are same. You don't have to make any change. Clear? Right? Few more points here. Basically, clone operation. Right? This is all the cloning, right? So I would say clone operation is one of the unsecured operation. This is a bit risky operation. We learned the topic, we learned the concept, we know how to implement, but still it is not as easy to implement this way in the real time application. It's not this easy. Here we are just learning purpose. We are written the simple logic here. It is easy, but in real time applications, right? It is not a safe thing to use the clone concept at all. But you need to have the understanding of this will be very much required. You don't know in the real time applications you will never see this happening, but it is important to Understand, because this is a very very risky operation. Basically, clone operation is one of the unsecured operation. Okay, in order to do the unsecured operation, we require a mark. That mark can be provided to one of the marker interface. Marker is clonable interface doesn't have even a single method. Okay. So what I'm trying to explain here is this is just a mark. When there are many unsecured or risky operations that we can perform using Java. One such among them is the cloning operation. Okay, while doing any unsecured or risky operation, we need to give a mark. That mark is nothing but this one, implementing clonable interface. That means when we write something like this, right, the compiler or the JDK or the system understand that okay, this is implementing the clonable interface. That means we need to be extra careful. This is a mark. This is the special instruction that the program gives to the compiler or JDK or the system, saying that this is something risky operation. We need to be extra careful. So while executing this program, compiler will be bit more extra careful. So just to get that attention of executing this program, we need to give the mark. That mark can be given by using the marker interface, right? So clonable is the marker interface. There are many other marker interfaces. For now, we learn about the clonable interface. Going forward, you will get even more. Okay, it is a clonable is a marker interface. It is an important question. What is the marker interface? You might get this question in the interviews. So you need to give this explanation. Right? In order to do the any unsecured operations, we require the mark. That mark can be provided by one of the marker interfaces. Clonable interface. But those marker interfaces will not have any methods in it. Those marker interfaces will not have any methods in it. Now let's see the clonable interface. If there are any methods inside it, just hold control and click on the clonable. See, this doesn't have anything. It's an empty thing. It's an empty thing. It doesn't have anything. Usually, whatever the let's see, we had learned about this object class, right? Though the clone method is coming from the object class has this many methods, right? See how many lines of code is there? Almost 560 lines of code. It has this many methods, right? Finalize, clone to string equals hash code, right? Get class, whatever we had seen in the notes here. But the clonable interface doesn't have any methods in it because this is just a marker interface. This will just give the extra instruction to the compiler. Any doubts?
No.
All right. So There are few more marker interfaces. I'll just give the list here, but I'll not explain now. Whenever, because there is a separate topic for each marker interface. Whenever that particular topic comes, we'll learn about each of them. So to see what are the marker interfaces, just Google. That is clonable, serializable, right? Serializable is one, clonable, right? And then we have externalizable. This is serializable. Serializable opposite is externalizable. So those are the topics we are yet to learn. Right? Remote interface. This is another interface. Remote. These are the few marker interface. There are hardly 4 or 5. Okay. We'll learn the others also going forward. So is it clear about the clone? If you want to write, you can write even more content. Cloning is producing uncopied or duplicate object. Copied or duplicate while calling the clone method the clone method whatever content is there in the original object so that content will be copied to the duplicate object as duplicate object, copied object. If I say copied again, this sentence will become a bit clumsy. That's the reason I'm putting copied. I'm not putting copied. It will be copied to the copied object. So that might give some confusion. Otherwise, it is either duplicate object or copied object. That's what we had seen, right? So H1 had 100. So the same content has copy to the H2 also. That's the reason when we printed H2.I, we had got the same thing. Did we run and then see the output or no? I think no. Let's run it and then see. So, 100. Let's write another program GHI. Create a constructor, generate constructor, select the board, click OK. Then now Now, what are the first step to implement the cloning here? The first step is to implement the clonable interface. Implements clonable. Okay. Now, let's say for example, we wanted to clone the object I1 to I2 equal to I1 dot clone. So immediately it will give the error. You need to handle the exception. Add exception to method signature. So it went there. So now it is still the red line. Now we need to do the casting. Right. So these are the three different steps we need to do. One is the implement the clonable interface. Second one is to handle the clone not supported exception. Third one is to cast the object that is returning from clone method to the required type. Clear? Now s out of I2 dot I, s out of I2 dot j. Right? So what I will do is I2 dot I equal to 30, I2 dot j equal to 40. Now s out of I1 dot I out of I1 dot starts here. All right. So what are we doing here? First, we are creating a object I1 with the values of 10 for I and 20 for j. Then I am creating another object I2, but that object is cloned from I1, right? So whatever the values that are there in I1 will be copied to the I2, right? So and then I am just printing I2 dot I and I2 dot j. After that, I am changing the values of I2 dot I and I2 dot j from 30 to 40, right? And then again, I am printing I1 dot I and I1 dot j, not I2. Though I am changing here, but I am printing I1 dot I and I1 dot j. So what is the expected output here? What is the expected output here?
10 20 10 20.
Exactly. 10 20 10 20 because I2 object is copied from I1, so that is 10 20. But we are actually changing the values of I2 object here, not the I1, but we are printing I1. So I1 values are still original. That means if you see the previous program, right, here H1 is the original object, H2 is the copied object, right? Similarly here I1 is the original object, I2 is the duplicate object or the copied object, right? So when you make any changes to the original object, the changes will reflect to duplicate object, but not in the reverse way. When you make the changes in the duplicate object, the changes will not go to the original object. Try to understand this. We will see more programs on this. Okay. Whatever changes we made to the original, sorry, made to the cloned object, cloned or duplicate or copy. These are the two names of the those are not reflecting in the original object. This is the point we wanted to learn out of this. We are here. Any doubts? Now let's see another program. IJ. Guys, if I'm going fast, please stop me. When you are silent, I understand that I assume that you don't have any questions. It is clear, so I move to the next program. Otherwise, I'll stay back. Class J implements clonable interface. That is the first step we need to do. Let's say we have a variable int I here in the class J. We create a constructor. I'll generate constructor, right? This one. Next PSVM. I will create an object for JJ1 equal to new day of 10. Now JJ2 equal to I want to clone J1 dot clone. So the next thing is let's click on it. You will see the red bulb. You have the two options: add exception to method signature. Right. Again, click on this red bulb. You need to do the casting. These steps we are done. Now compilation is clean. Right. Now what I do is j1 dot I equal to 20. Put of j2 dot I. J2 dot I. Now what is the expected output?
10 and 0.
10 and 10 and
Default value.
where is the default value? How many print statements I have here?
20.
20. Okay, 20 and we have only one print statement. So there will be only one value. No default value, nothing. Either 10 or 20. So now you tell me whether the output is 10 or 20.
20.
20. Alright. Let's run the program and see the output. It is 10. So what did we understood here? Earlier we learned that whatever the changes we made to the cloned object are not reflecting to the original object. That means in the reverse order. Even in the forward direction also. Initially J1 is created with 10. We are doing the clone. After cloning is done, again we are making the changes. So after cloning, if you make any changes to the original object that are not reflecting, that is the behavior we are seeing. Right? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Very simple, normal behavior, right? Whenever you are making something out of it, right? Whenever you create any duplicate thing from anything, in general, I'm talking, not in this programming way, right? If you make any changes to the original thing, it will not go to the duplicate one, right? Let's say you are making, you are making some box or some design or the craft, right? In the middle you just cut it down to two things, so both will become duplicates. Then you make the put some color on first one, doesn't mean that it will go to the second one, right? It cannot go, right? The same behavior, very normal, simple behavior, right? Once the cloning is done, whatever the values were there before the cloning, all those values will be going to the duplicate object. But once the cloning is done, if you make any changes to the original object, it will not reflect to the duplicate object. Guys, tell me if there is any confusion. I'm just using just few words. Original object, duplicate object, clone. That's it. Not anything else. Changes in the original object are not reflecting duplicate object. Changes in the original object are also not reflecting. Changes in the original object are not sorry. Changes in the original object are not reflecting to the duplicate object, and changes in the duplicate object are not reflecting to the original object. So both are not happening. That means what is this? Both the objects are disjoint. Both original and duplicate objects are disjoint. We call it as a disjoint or 100% disjoint. So there is no relation. Once the cloning is done, there is no link. Right? If at all, if there are any values that has to go from original to duplicate or duplicate to original, it has to happen before the cloning, before calling the clone method, not after calling the clone method. So this behavior is called deep copy operation. Deep copy operation. Deep copy operation. When both of them are disjoint and changing any object is not reflecting to the copied or original object or vice versa, right? Then this behavior is called as deep copy operation, right? So when this deep copy operation takes place, if the attributes, what are the attributes here? What are the attributes here? What is the variable here?
I.
I is the attribute. I is the variable, right? So if the attributes are primitive or immutable objects, then we can achieve the deep copy operation. Deep copy operation. So whenever we are seeing this, it is also important to see what are the variables that we are seeing. Or these variables are the primitive variables or the and the immutable object. So immutable concept we still did not learn about it. We learn little later, right? But for now you just think about the primitives, right? Here I is a primitive only, right? Because its data type is just int and then starts with the small letter, right? It's not the integer. It's not the integer I. There is a difference between this and this, right? This is the primitive data type. That is the object data type or the wrapper data type. So whenever we have all the primitive data types, right, all the primitive objects or the primitive variables, then you can achieve the deep copy operation. It is very very important question again in the interviews. They will ask what is the deep copy operation and how you can achieve it. So you need to tell this definition, and when they say how to achieve it, you need to give this point. Clear? Any doubt so far? Moving to the next program.
One doubt, Ravi.
Yes, please.
If we are assigning the value of I before clonable, it will change, I think.
It will change. Let's say, for example, till before until you call the clone method, this is all the original behavior. Let's say you have another 100 lines of code where it changes the value of I here, like 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, 100, 200, 500, like that. All of that belongs to the original behavior. Once you call the clone method, then the deep copy operation is coming into effect and all this behavior will play the role. Now j2.i will be 20 only, because j2 is created when after setting the value of original object to 20, right? The cloning is happening here, not here, not here, right? Clear or
Okay,
any doubt?
clear.
Nice. I'll put it back. Moving to the
Sir,
yes,
sir, we can clone the cloned object, sir.
we can clone the
Sir, J2 is already is a clone object, sir.
right.
We can clone J2, sir.
Yeah, you mean to say j3 equal to j2
J2
dot
dot.
clone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can do it. Absolutely, you can do it. Which is another duplicate, right? J2 is created from J1 and J3 is created from J2. Like this, you can go for any long.
Sir, now in between J3 and J2, we have assigned the value, sir, J1.20.
Right.
Now if we print J3.i, what is the output?
Now you only tell me. You only tell me now.
I think 20, sir.
See, J1 is the original or duplicate?
J1 is original, sir.
Okay. J2 is,
Duplicates.
J3 is.
Duplicate.
So now you have the answer. Where we
Yes.
are changing value?
Yes, sir.
No, where we are changing the value? I mean,
In line number 16, sir.
for which object? Duplicate or original?
Original, sir.
Original. So what is the point that we learned here? Changes in the original object are not reflecting to the duplicate object. So j3.i also will be 10 only.
Okay, sir.
Clear?
Yes.
It is a good question and also good thought process, right? That you wanted to understand this. See, I might be able to just give one example. I cannot give 100 examples. But out of this, if you are understanding very well, you can create another 100 programs out of just this, out of just only this program. So that is the practice that I am expecting from you, all of you guys.
Sir, I have one more doubt.
Yes.
So, after you change the value of J1, the original object, can we change the value of the clone?
Yeah. J2 dot equal to 30. Like this. Right?
Ah.
That
And
means
we'll add J3 also, clone of J2.
you want to have J3 also. You want to clone before J2 dot I equal to 30 or after?
After J2 dot I equal to
After
30.
J2. Okay. We'll do one thing. We'll keep this program original. Okay. We'll make these changes in the next program. Okay. This is how it was, right? Originally, right?
Yeah.
We'll create another program with your thing. Exactly the same thing. I'll just copy paste. Let's do all that experiments in the next class so that original will be original. So this will be treated as a JK. Instructor should be class name. A1. Exactly the same program. Okay. Now you tell me what is that you wanted. Here you
Now,
wanted me
instead of
to create
changing
the
the value of original object, we'll just change the value of the clone, that is K2.
here first you want me to clone the object, right? K2.
Yeah.
Okay. K2 dot. So this requires the casting. Okay, understood. Okay, now
Now we'll change the value of clone,
clone is K3 or K2?
K2.
K2. Here only after cloning.
No,
Cloning
before
already.
cloning, before cloning only we'll change the value.
Okay, all right. What is the value we'll put?
30.
Now,
Now, S out of K3.
out of K3, yeah?
K3 dot A.
K3 dot I. That's all?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, now K1 is, so what is the original object first?
K1.
Yeah, so why I am asking is, this is how the approach we should take. Whenever you see this kind of logic or the code, right, the cloning, so you should see, okay, what is the original object first. Wherever you see new, that is the original object, right, that is K1. Okay, K1 is the original object. All right. So next K2, what is the K2? K2 is being cloned from which object?
K1.
K1. Okay, right. Next, K1 dot I is becoming 20. Then K2 dot I is becoming 30, right? Then again we are creating another object K3,
K3.
which is cloned from
Clone
which
of
object? K2.
K2. Duplicate object.
Duplicate object, right? Duplicate out of duplicate here, right?
Yes.
Duplicate out of duplicate.
Okay.
Now K2 dot I, right?
Yes.
So what is the value of K2 dot I here?
10.
K2 dot I is 10.
Yes.
Sure. Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
K2 dot I is 10.
I think it will come as 30.
Right? Because we are creating the duplicate object here. That's when here we have the 10. But we are changing it here. After changing it, we are printing it here, right?
Mm-hmm.
While printing it, you should take the latest behavior. That has come either from the cloning, or if you had reassigned it again, that should take.
Okay.
Right? Next, K3.I.
That will also be 30.
30. Let's run and verify. This has got some error or exception. Clone not supported exception. See, 14 line number 14. K2 equal to K1 dot clone. This is class K1.
Interface.
Yes, exactly. Means clonable interface. Run it again. See, it has run successfully now. The output is 30 and 30. Clear? Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Any other scenario? Anybody wants to try any other scenario? Feel free. I'll be more than happy if you come up with such scenarios.
One thing, Raghu,
Yes.
already we assigned I equals to 10. After cloning, it can't change, no, that value. Then how can we get 30?
Where?
K2.
K2. Okay, here K2 dot I is 30.
Yeah.
Right? So K2
Actually,
K2 is the duplicate object that is cloned from the K1. Right?
yeah.
So after cloning, we are changing the value. We are assigning the value, right? K1, K2 dot I.
Yeah, but after cloning, it won't take the
No, no.
values
That is okay.
only for K1.
Yeah, yeah. I think you are mixing up with the two things, K1 and K2. Right? What the
Yeah.
point that we learned in the previous program is after cloning, if we change the value of I, that is from K1, that will not come to K2. Correct?
Yes.
But here, in the duplicate object itself, only we are changing from 10 to 30. This value is not coming from K1. Let's say, if you see this right, K1 dot I, this value will not come to K2. Let's say, for example, if I remove this line, K2 dot I think this will solve your doubt, right? Here K1 dot I, right?
Yeah.
And I am printing the K2 dot I. So what is the
That
value
time
to be
we
printed here?
10.
10.
10, right? Because I am changing the original object here.
Okay.
Original value will not reflect to duplicate object. Duplicate value will not reflect to original object. But you can change the original object, you can change the duplicate object. Try to understand. Here are the points that I had written, right? Changes in the original object are not reflecting to the duplicate object. Changes to the duplicate object are not reflecting to the original object. Both are distinct. You can change both of them, but the behavior will be limited to only that particular object. The values will not reflect to old object or the cloned object or the duplicate or original. That is the point. Clear or any doubt? Should I go little slow or should I repeat?
Sir, we'll do one small change.
Yes. I'll keep it back.
Uh, Before changing the value of K2, we'll add a SOut statement for K2.
Exactly. Exactly. Very nice. So we'll print K2.I here. Okay. You got I only, right?
Sir, your voice is breaking in and out.
What about now? Still same?
Now I think K2 value will come up as 10.
Yeah. Others got it? I think Rajalakshmi Garu. Is it clear now?
Yeah, yeah, clear.
Now we get the value as 10 because we did not change it here while printing. After printing, we are again changing it. 10, 30, 30.
Yes, sir.
Clear? Any other scenarios that we should try? Any other scenarios? Can I move to the next one?
Yes, sir.
JKL. I'll create manager class for this. Manager. I'll have another variable int a, get an object for L, small l. Don't get confused, it is L and small l. Okay. Unfortunately, the names had come in this way. I'll create constructor, right? SVM. Now I create the object for L first. L1 equal to new L. L1 dot equal to L. So I create the object for L manager. L manager. What do we say? M1 equal to new L manager of. We take one variable j that might be 20, and then what is another parameter for this constructor? Object of type L. So which is already created here as L1. L manager M2 equal to, I create the clone here, M1 dot. So we get the error, we need to handle the exception, and then we need to cast it. Again, click on this red line, get the bulb, cast it, right? Go up and then implement the clonable interface. But we don't get the error. Delete. Now M2 dot j equal to some 40. Okay, and M2 dot L dot I equal to 200. Now S out of M1 dot j out of M1 dot L dot. Now let's understand here. Little bit tricky, guys. Be focused. Closing everything. Here we have a class L with a variable I. Okay, I just put it on the Okay, class L. Okay, then we have created another class L manager that implements the clonable interface, right? That has a construct, that has a variable j. So here j is a primitive or non-primitive or the object.
Primitive.
Primitive. Next, in the L manager class, I am adding another variable which is small l of type what? What is the data type of this L?
Non-primitive.
What is the data type?
Like long, I think.
L. L is the data type here. You see, L is the data type, right? It is nothing but L equal to mu L, right? So in this way, what is the data type? While creating the object, what is the data type of L? Basic thing, right? While learning about the objects we learned, we are creating a object with the name small l for the class capital L and assigned to the data type capital L, right? So that means here the data type is capital L. So this capital L is primitive or non-primitive? Primitive or non-primitive?
Non-primitive.
Non-primitive. Why?
Because
Capital.
uppercase, yeah.
Sorry.
Because it's in uppercase.
Yes, it is in uppercase. That is the one reason. And then we have very limited data types in primitive. What is that? Byte, short, long, int, float, double, char. That's it.
Yep.
Those are the only primitive data types. Byte, short, long, int, float, double, char. The two that starts with a small letter. That's it. Whatever you see extra is the non-primitive data types or the object data types or the wrapper data types. Right? This is just like another object data type, right? So this is a variable L that is being created for the class L. The data type is capital L. Okay. Now we are creating the constructor for the L manager class. So this has the two variables, right? So we need to have both the variables int j and L. Okay. Now we have written the main method. So in the main method, what I am doing first, I am creating the object for class L. Okay, and then inside that L there is a variable I. So for that variable, I am assigning the value here. L1 dot I is 10. Okay. Now I am creating the object for this class where we are implementing the clonable interface. That is L manager M1 equal to new L manager of. So L manager has what variables? L manager has what variables?
JL.
J and L, right? So we need to pass J and value of J and L, right? So value of J is 20, that is straightforward int. So we can pass any number here. But L, we need to pass a object of type L, right? We had created here, right? L1, that is L1, right? So we are passing the object L1. So that L1 has the value of I as 10 internally. Okay. Now I am creating another object M2, but I am cloning from M1. M1 dot clone. That means, so whatever the values are there here in the M1, all those values will be copied to M2. Right? Clear so far? Any confusion here?
No. No.
Okay. So we have created the copied or duplicate object by calling the clone method. Right? Now what I am doing, m2.j is 40. What I am changing here? Original object or the duplicate object?
Duplicate object.
We are changing the behavior for the duplicate object, that is m2, right? So if I don't do this, what is the value of m2 dot j? If I don't do this, what is the value of m2 dot j?
20 and 10.
20 and
10.
10, that comes from L1 dot I, right? That is right. So what I am doing now is we are changing the values of the duplicate object, right? That is m2 dot j is 40 and m2 dot L dot I is 200, right? So what we now we are printing original object, right? We are printing the original object. So what are the values are expected now? What is the output expected now?
20 and
Is it 40 200 or 10 20 10?
20 10.
20 10, right? That's what we learned in our previous logic, right? Where is that? It was in K, right? Not K. Where did I write? Yeah, J, right? So we were expecting 10, sorry, 20 and 10, right? This was the expected, right? All of you, yes or no? Or anybody has any different thoughts?
Yes.
Right. All of you are on the same page, but let's run the program and then see the surprise. What happened now?
We have changed the value of M2 as a 200. So that's the reason it's getting 200.
Okay, it's the same thing. I'm not changing anything. It's the same thing. So we were expecting 20, 10, but we had got 20 and 200. One second, guys. There is some noise in my background. Okay, should be okay now. Okay. So what is happening now? Raghu, you were saying something. Can you repeat why you were getting 200 when we expected 20 and 10?
Because it doesn't M2 value as 200.
M2 value as
200.
where? Here.
Yep.
Yeah,
20.
here it is 200. You are saying 200. You might be saying 200. But in the previous program, what we learned, here we are, of course, we are changing the value for M2, but here we are printing the M1, right? That's what we
M1.
learned, right, in the previous program.
Yes, Rao.
If we change the duplicate object, it will not reflect to the original object. If we change the original object, it will not reflect to the duplicate object, right?
Yes.
But here it is different, right? Here we are changing the duplicate value, that is M2. But we are printing M1 and it is reflecting here, right, as a 200,
Correct.
right? So whatever we learned in the previous program is wrong, right? Guys, getting it?
Sir, it is different for non-primitive data types. I think.
Sorry? I
It's
know,
because it is a non-primitive data type. Sir.
I know. Maybe for you, this is the second or third or fourth time of learning, so you caught the point. Others might be in this crazy thinking. This is what we learned just now, but again it is behaving in a different way now in the next program. Right? Others, you are in the same confusion?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now let's go back to our notes and then see our definition. Let's remove this. If the attributes are primitive or immutable objects, then we can achieve deep copy operation. That means whatever we had seen till previous program, that is true when the attributes are primitives or immutable. But here, these are all the primitives. Both the variables are the primitives. The attributes are the primitives here.
No.
No, right?
Only
We have a mix of primitive and non-primitive. This is the rule is breaking here. This is the rule that is breaking this definition. It has to be, all of them has to be primitive and immutable. Then the previous behavior is true. But when you have mix or when you have the non-primitive, at least one non-primitive variable, when you have at least one non-primitive variable, at least I'm saying, I'm stressing on the at least, when we have at least one non-primitive variable, then the values will be moved from duplicate to original and original to duplicate. This is called as the shallow copy. This is called as shallow copy operation. Shallow, sorry, this is shallow. Clear? When the values are changed in original object and if it reflects in the duplicate object and vice versa. Vice versa. Then it is called as shallow copy operation. Shallow copy operation. Shallow copy operation, this can be achieved by having at least one non-primitive attribute. I would say attribute, not either the object or the variable. Attribute means that can be either variable or the object or whatever it is. Right? Here guys. So what are the things that you need to see when we are doing the clone? You should see what are the types of the variables. Are they are completely the non-primitives or it has any primitive data types. If it has at least one non-primitive, then there is a chance of shallow copy operation. So you need to be even more extra careful here. That means the values, if you change the value in the original object, it will reflect in the duplicate object. If you change the value in the duplicate object, it will reflect in the original object. That means shallow. See, simple English term, shallow. Shallow means what? I think reflection, right? Shallow means shallow or shadow. Not requiring capable of serious thought analysis of contemporary society. I don't know, maybe it is not relevant, but we can still relate it with the reflection. Shallow is nothing but the reflection. Right? Clear any doubts here now? Anybody wants to try any other scenarios here? At least one non-primitive attribute or one user defined object or one mutable derived. User defined object. What is user defined object here? In this case, L is the user defined object because class L is, we have created the class, right? It's not something like readily available class in Java. That is, user is defining this, right? So that's the reason we call it as a user defined or one mutable or not exactly one, guys. Here it says at least one non-primitive attribute or one user defined object or at least one mutable or at least one derived. This at least belongs to all these things. If you want, I can put this for each and everything. User defined object or least unmutable or least one derived object. It's called as the shallow copy. This is called as the shallow copy. Clear? Any doubts here? Is it okay if I extend for another 15 minutes? I have one last uh, program in this topic. We'll close here. L. Now I'll create M. Int I to create a constructor. Create one method here, public object of duplicate object. Right? Inside this, return dot string. Immediately do the add exception to the method signature. I implement the clonable interface. This is one class. Now I create another class for this M manager. This M M1 equal to M of 10. Create, try to create the clone now. M2 equal to M1 dot. We call the get duplicate method. Get method is throwing the clone not supported exception. So we cast it all these things, right? Now, do dot type. Let's run the program and see how. Okay, the value is 10. So this is slightly a different way here. Okay, so first I had created a class M. That class is implementing the clonable interface, which has a variable I, that is non-primitive, sorry, primitive, right? Then we have a constructor with the same variable. Then I had written one method, that is get duplicate method. This is the method that I had written. Inside that method, what I am doing, I am just returning the super dot clone. That means the return the cloned object for class M, right? That is the reason when I call the clone method, it has forced me to add the exception handling here, right? I added. Then I came to the manager class. Inside the manager class, I'm creating one object M1 first with the value of 10, and then I'm creating the M2. If you see here, I'm not calling the M1 dot clone. Earlier I used to call M1 dot clone. See here, right? You see anything? I was calling the clone method, but here I am not calling the clone method. I am calling the get duplicate method, which is available in M1, right? This is the non-static method, right? So non-static method has to be called by using the object, right? I am calling the object M1 dot get duplicate, but inside the get duplicate I am calling the clone method. I am indirectly calling, right? Not directly, but I am indirectly. I am calling one method. That method is internally calling the clone method, right? And it is returning the same cloned object that is being assigned to M1, and then I am printing the value of I, right? Clear? This is slightly a different way of implementing the cloning. Not the direct way, it is the indirect way. Any confusion? I'll just write some notes here. Here, you can't call the, here we cannot call the clone method, because this class is not implementing the clonable interface. Actually, this class is implementing the clonable interface, so we are calling it here, right? But we are calling a method outside of this class, which is calling the clone method and implementing the clonable interface. All these three things should happen in the same class. Clone implementing the clonable interface, calling the clone method, handling the clone not supported exception. All these three things should happen in the same class. We cannot call the clone method from outside of the class M, because clone is protected method, right? We learned about the public, private, protected, and default. So clone is the protected method we learned. If you want to see, just click on the clone method. You will see the protected access specifier, right? Clone is the protected method. Here, using the clone operation, calling a method outside the class, implementing clonable interface. Here, any doubts? Any doubts in today's overall class? You need to do a lot of practice, little bit tricky, right? But all of it belongs to these points, right? Each and every word has some meaning here. So, in terms of the interview perspective, when they talk about the cloning, if you talk about cloning, deep copy, shallow copy, there won't be any cross question. Right? So that is how we need to prepare for the interviews. Okay, if no questions, I'll stop it here.